You know, there's a lot of evil in this world. We're going to talk about it on today's Odd Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. Thanks for watching the podcast. About 3 years ago, it was I think the 14th of May, 2017, my good friend and Yezidi translator, Shaheen, was killed by a sniper's bullet while he was trying to save the life of a little girl who that same sniper had just shot right through the eye. And as I think about Shaheen's life, as I try to remember him every year, I remember that Shaheen had a real heart for the Yezidi women who were stolen by ISIS and sold into sex slavery. And so I just want to show you a little bit about about the time that I spent with Shaheen shortly before he died. And I want you to see his heart when he talks about the Yezidi women. Check this out. On my last trip to Iraq in November 2015, the Kurdish Peshmerga forces were massing to retake the city of Sinjar, which had been captured by ISIS in August 2014. We watched as U.S. aircraft pounded the city in advance of the operation, and when the Peshmerga entered the town on November 13th, the Islamic State had already retreated, and the Kurds faced very little resistance. But the damage had been done. ISIS completely razed the city, carrying away anything of value and destroying almost everything that was left. CBN was given rare access to explore this ruined landscape. What we saw was absolutely chilling. Many homes have been reduced to rubble. Those still standing look like this. What was once a city of 500,000 now sits silent and empty. This is one of many tunnels that were found underneath the city of Sinjar after the Peshmerga took over from ISIS. ISIS dug these tunnels so that they could move around the city without being observed, and they ran communications cables, there's network cables, there's overhead cover, everything they need, and not all of these have been cleared yet from mines and other IEDs. So this is where the tunnels come out inside of these homes, which are now, as you can see, absolutely destroyed. This one looks like it might have got hit by a bomb or something. And this has been cleared, but many of these houses are still wired up with IEDs. And so we have to be very careful where we go here, and who knows how long it'll take before the people can come back and try to rebuild their lives. You know, if you ever heard of the city of Stalingrad in World War II, this is what I imagine it looking like. Look at this. Everything just collapsed, destroyed. It's just a wrecked and shattered city. This just goes to show that ISIS only comes to kill and steal and destroy, just like someone else we know.
Sinjar is a land of shattered dreams right now. Everything is destroyed.
Our interpreter, Shaheen Nazdar, is a Yezidi who fought ISIS as his people fled Sinjar in August 2014.
Here in Sinjar, ISIS captured more than 6,000. They killed a lot of people, and right now still there is 3,800 in ISIS captivity. We don't know if they are alive or they are being killed.
You might wonder what happened to the 500,000 people who lived here. Many were able to escape to the safety of Mount Sinjar. Some still live there today. Those less fortunate were captured by ISIS, and it's only now becoming apparent the scale of brutality those poor souls faced. Mass graves like this one are being found all over the area, where perhaps thousands of Yezidi men, women, and children were executed and left to rot.
Right now we are in one mass grave in Sinjar. More than 20 mass graves been found out in Sinjar. Also, the number of mass graves right now in Sinjar is more than the number of the family right now in Sinjar city.
This photo taken from Mount Sinjar at night tells the story. The city of Sinjar is here. This is the new front line established by the Peshmerga in November 2015. One of their objectives was to cut off Highway 47, here, which was being used by ISIS to supply Mosul. These lights beyond are villages still under the control of ISIS, where many of the more than 3,000 Yazidis taken hostage are still being held. Red lights are vehicular traffic, moving mostly towards Syria, which gives an indication that the Islamic State is pillaging anything of value from Iraq's second-largest city, in advance of the Iraqi government's planned operation to retake Mosul later this year.
ISIS not been stopped because they still moving between Syria and Iraq. All night we saw their trucks, their convoy go and back. No airstrike, nothing. They are free.
In the meantime, the people who once lived here continue to hope that their loved ones held captive will someday be returned.
I think America have good, great army, but they don't use it for this evil ISIS. For what is this army?
From Sinjar in northern Iraq, I'm Chuck Holton. So even today, there's something like 2,900 Yezidi women who are still missing, that never came home, and many of them are still being held captive by ISIS in remote areas around Syria and Iraq. And I want to share with you the story of one Yazidi woman who was set free, but is still struggling with the bonds of slavery because of what she went through. Check this out. Years after she was kidnapped by Islamic State militants and sold into slavery, Laila Talo revisits the now abandoned site where she was held against her will in the far northwest of Iraq.
I wish I was back in the past, even if I was in the hands of the Islamic State. But at least then I was living with my family here. My brothers and my husband were alive. No matter how long the captivity, 5 years or more, as long as we were together and not separated, regardless of the suffering and no matter what happens, but not to lose them.
She was kidnapped in 2014 and eventually sold into sex slavery.
This is the room where my husband and I were living. All of these houses were full of Yezidi families. They were living here.
She initially escaped that fate because she and her husband were forcibly converted to Islam. This allowed her family to live as second-class citizens for a while, working for the Islamic State mainly as herders, along with other Yazidis who were moved to that area. But so many people escaped that the militants eventually gathered all the men and took them away, likely killing them and throwing their bodies into this sinkhole, where bones can still be seen whitening in the sun. It was after this that Tala was sold as a sex slave. Investigators piecing together the story of Islamic State kidnappings, enslavement, and systematic rape of hundreds of Yazidi women and girls can now show that it was planned at the highest level of the group's leadership, executed through its entire institutional structure, and provided with a theological justification. This makes it unusual among cases of sexual abuse perpetrated in modern wars, says Bill Wiley of the Commission for International Justice and Accountability, one of the leading investigators on this case.
The Daesh example is unlike anything else because there's a theological basis, however false, lent to the practices of enslavement and the sexual abuse of these women. That's the fundamental difference. It's systematized.
It also led to a market in slaves that proliferated out of the group's control, with slave owners and traders buying and enslaving Yazidi women for profit. Talo was first sold to an Iraqi doctor, who 3 days later gifted her to a friend. Then she became property of Abdullah, an Iraqi surgeon, who held her for 8 months. Then, for nearly $6,000, she was sold to a Saudi man, a member of Islamic State's religious police, who had his private slave market at his home, buying and selling women online. After being repeatedly raped by this man, she was sold to another Saudi, Abu Hamza, also a trader. He allegedly got her pregnant twice and forced her to abort both pregnancies, even though Islamic State had rules against abortion, even for slaves. Throughout this ordeal, her 2 small children stayed with her. Her next owner agreed to free her for an under-the-table payment of $7,500, but it meant getting married to another Islamic State fighter. Eventually, Talo and her children managed to escape the Islamic State with the help of smugglers at a cost of $19,500, which her family managed to scrape together. Of the 6,417 Yazidis abducted during the attack on Sinjar in August 2014, some 3,500 have managed to escape in recent years, most of them ransomed, according to Kurdish officials and researchers. One of them is Talo's niece, who returned recently in February. More than 2,900 Yazidis are still missing, including 1,344 women and girls. Researchers believe most are dead, although some are still known to be living in opposition-controlled areas of Syria. And for women like Layla Talo, closure will come when the last Yazidi woman comes home. So, folks, we sent some money to try to get some of these girls out. This particular woman you just saw had to raise like $19,000 and give it to the smugglers in order to get herself out of there. Her family scraped together that money, and our friend Victor Marks is still working heavily in that area trying to get girls out of there, and we'd like to join him with that. So if you want to have a part in trying to get some of these girls out of slavery, contact us, let us know. Anything you want to send and designate to try to help the Yazidi girls, we will send on to Victor, and he'll use definitely to try to get some girls out of that unbelievable hell of sex slavery and bondage to ISIS. Thanks for watching The Hot Zone. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.